We're constantly told that the best designs are behind us, that modern cars have lost their soul. But what if the future of automotive design isn't about looking forward, but looking back? What if the most innovative thing a car company can do is to carefully, deliberately, look into its own past? Welcome to Winds of Thought. Today, we are re-embarking on a deep dive into one of the most fascinating and persistent cycles in all of consumer goods, the phenomenon of retro-styled automobiles. This isn't just a story of metal and rubber. It's a story of marketing genius, profound human psychology, and our powerful, often romantic connection to a past we may not have even experienced firsthand. We're going to trace this journey from its earliest whispers to the multi-billion-dollar global strategy it is today, and even dare to predict where it's headed next. Let's start with the most fundamental question: why? Why do multi-billion-dollar corporations, with armies of the world's best designers, constantly return to the well of history? Imagine a product development team at a major manufacturer. They've crunched the numbers, they've studied the market, and they've come up with a new model that is, for lack of a better word, perfectly adequate. It's not the fastest car in its class, it won't win any safety awards, and its interior is more functional than luxurious. In a brutally competitive market, how do you make this car stand out? How do you make people feel something for a product that is, on paper, mediocre? The answer, discovered and rediscovered for decades, lies in leveraging one of the most powerful emotional triggers known to humanity: nostalgia. Nostalgia isn't just a fleeting feeling of sentimentality in the hands of a skilled marketer, it's a superpower. It can bypass logical comparison charts and specifications sheets entirely, speaking directly to the heart. It's the difference between selling transportation and selling a time machine. One gets you from A to B. The other promises to take you back to a summer evening in 1975, even if you weren't born yet. Our minds have a beautiful self-protecting flaw. We tend to sand down the rough edges of history. We remember the joy of a first drive, the freedom of the open road, the unmistakable style of a classic silhouette. We conveniently forget the constant breakdowns, the non-existent safety features, the terrible fuel economy, and the fact that the heater barely worked. A retro-styled car offers a brilliant psychological solution. It promises all the emotional appeal and iconic status of a bygone era, but with the seamless reliability, modern safety, and everyday comfort we expect today. This isn't just a vehicle you're buying, it's a carefully curated experience, a time machine on four wheels that offers a ticket to a rose-tinted past without any of the historical inconveniences. Now, you might be wondering, is there a predictable pattern to all of this? Does this nostalgia wave just hit randomly? Many industry analysts and historians point to a compelling pattern we can call the generational echo. This theory suggests that about every 20 to 25 years, a new wave of retro design emerges, and its target audience is very specific. People in their late 40s and 50s. Think about it. This demographic group is often at the peak of their careers and their disposable income. They've started families, built careers, and are now looking backward, fondly reminiscing about their youth, their high school and college years, a time of freedom and self-discovery. They possess the financial means to act on that longing, to buy a tangible piece of that simpler time. While a small segment of this group might dive headfirst into the challenging and expensive world of true classic car ownership, a much larger segment prefers the convenience of a brand new, warranted and dependable car that simply wears the stylish mask of the past. It's nostalgia without the hassle of points, carburetors, or finding a mechanic who knows what a distributor is. So, when did this clever marketing strategy first emerge? The very first whispers of deliberate retro design appeared in a seemingly unlikely place: the futuristic, jet age-obsessed 1950s. This was an era obsessed with the future, with tail fins mimicking rockets and dashboards looking like aircraft controls. Yet paradoxically, it was also the moment a small but noticeable cultural longing for the good old days began to formalize. We saw the first dedicated car museums open their doors. The first classic car clubs were formed by enthusiasts. In the pages of car magazines, you could even find buyers' advice on which vintage Mercedes or Duesenberg from the 20s and 30s would be a wise investment. But these were genuine classics. The true pioneers of the retro-styled concept car were, as often happens, concept vehicles. They were rolling test beds for public reaction. Take the stunning 1954 Buick Wildcat II concept, its most striking and anachronistic feature: fully exposed front wheels and freestanding, almost delicate, headlights. This was a clear and deliberate nod to the elegant, open-top roadsters of the 1920s and 30s, a design element the industry had largely abandoned in favor of fully integrated fenders. This wasn't an accident. It was a reference, a knowing wink to the connoisseurs in the crowd. This bold idea soon trickled down from the show stand to a real, production car. The bizarrely magnificent and confusingly styled 1961 Imperial. This luxury leviathan was a chaotic mix of decades. It had the soaring tail fins and panoramic windshields of the 1950s, but it also featured those freestanding headlights and a trunk styled to look like it had a spare tire mounted on the back, just like the cars from the 1930s. It was as if the designers couldn't decide which beloved era to pay homage to, so they chose all of them at once. The result was a car that was both of its time and completely out of time. This bold experimentation in the early 60s paved the way for what many consider the first true retro wave. This period gave rise to a new category, the neoclassical car. These weren't exact replicas or kit cars. They were entirely new machines, built on modern chassis, but with bodies heavily inspired by the grand touring cars and dramatic roadsters of the pre-war period. Companies like Excalibur led the charge, creating vehicles that felt instantly familiar and romantic, yet were mechanically new and, relatively speaking, reliable. They were selling a fantasy, a dream of a bygone era of motoring elegance, and it was a potent fantasy that people were willing to pay for. By the late 1960s and throughout the 1970s, this retro influence had seeped out of the niche workshops and into the very heart of mainstream American automotive design. It became a subtle but pervasive styling language. Vinyl roofs, for example, were a direct evocation of the convertible tops from 1930s luxury coaches. Fake spare tire humps on trunk lids, those so-called door bars on the sides of sedans intended to mimic the folding tops of horse-drawn carriages, and upright formal grills all were subtle yet deliberate callbacks to a perceived golden age of motoring and craftsmanship. Car designers were, in effect, littering their new creations with historical Easter eggs for a public that was increasingly nostalgic. But all trends eventually fade. The 1980s arrived with a new, boxy, and fiercely technological aesthetic. The retro craze in the West, laden with its vinyl and chrome, cooled down considerably. The future was now about digital dashboards, fuel injection, and wedge shapes. However, just as the flame seemed to be dying in one part of the world, a new player was about to reignite it in a spectacular and unexpected way: Japan. In the late 80s, Nissan, in a stroke of marketing brilliance, launched what became affectionately known as the Pike Cars. This was a series of limited production, incredibly charming vehicles sold only in Japan. The B1, the POW, the Escargot van, and the now legendary Figaro. Their design was a revelation. They featured rounded headlights, soft, simple shapes, and a pervasive cuteness that was a direct rebellion against the sharp-edged, aggressive designs that dominated the 1980s. They weren't looking back at American land yachts. They were harking back to 1960s European economy cars like the Mini and the Fiat 500. This was kawaii, the culture of cuteness applied as a serious automotive design philosophy. The Figaro, in particular, was so perfectly executed that to an untrained eye, it could genuinely be mistaken for a lost classic from the 1960s. Despite being packed with modern electronics, this Japanese retro wave, though initially a domestic phenomenon, sent ripples across the globe. It proved that the retro concept had universal appeal and could be executed with incredible sophistication and charm, not just as a pastiche. It set the stage perfectly for the biggest and most widespread retro explosion the world had ever seen, the early 2000s. This Japanese retro wave, though initially a domestic phenomenon, sent ripples across the globe. It proved that the retro concept had universal appeal and could be executed with incredible sophistication and charm, not just as a pastiche. It set the stage perfectly for the biggest and most widespread retro explosion the world had ever seen, the early 2000s. This was the third wave, and it was an absolute orgy of automotive nostalgia. Applying our generational echo theory, this was the precise moment the massive baby boomer generation, now nostalgic for the 50s and 60s of their youth, were hitting their peak spending and empty nester years. Car manufacturers, sensing a gold rush, delivered en masse. Chrysler, again a pioneer, gave us the audacious Plymouth Prowler, a factory-built hot rod that looked straight out of the 1950s, and the wildly popular, though controversial, PT Cruiser, which channeled the spirit of 1930s panel vans. Volkswagen brilliantly resurrected the Beetle, transforming it from a symbol of basic transportation into a fashion icon, complete with a dashboard vase for a flower. BMW resurrected the Mini, masterfully capturing the original's cheeky character in a modern front-wheel drive package. Ford brought back the Thunderbird as a retro roadster aimed squarely at affluent retirees. Most significantly, American muscle was reborn. The Ford Mustang, Chevrolet Camaro, and Dodge Challenger all returned with designs that featured clear and undeniable nods to their iconic 1960s ancestors. For nearly a decade, it seemed every other new car launch had one eye firmly fixed on the rearview mirror. Now, take a look at the cars on the road today. You are living through the fourth, and in many ways most distinct, retro wave. What era is it drawing from? Look at the sharp angles, the flat surfaces, the digital light signatures. It's unmistakably the 1980s and 90s. The 2021 Hyundai Ioniq 5 is arguably the poster child for this new movement. It's an all-electric vehicle, the very symbol of the future. Yet its design is a masterclass in nostalgia. Its sharp, angular lines, its clamshell hood, and its pixelated taillights are a clear and deliberate homage to the boxy hatchbacks and Giugiaro-style designs of the 80s. Like the Lancia Delta Integrale and the original Volkswagen Scirocco, the Honda E, another electric city car, uses its simple, friendly face and short overhangs to recall the utilitarian charm of the first-generation Civic, even stayed. European manufacturers are in on the act. Renault is bringing back icons like the 4 and 5 with a thoroughly modern, retro-futuristic twist, proving that this trend is truly global. We don't just build cars, we rebuild memories. We package nostalgia and sell it back to ourselves, and we are seemingly willing to pay a premium for the privilege. It's a testament to the enduring power of emotional design over pure utilit. ILITARIANISM. So, what comes next? If the generational echo holds true, we can make a prediction. Look ahead about 20 years from now, to around the year 2040. What will the next retro wave look back on? It will be the turn of the millennium, the early 2000s, the era of the first mainstream hybrids, of bubbly organic car designs, of the original Toyota Prius and the Audi TT. Could we possibly see a reboot of the PT Cruiser? It sounds absurd today, but so did the idea of an 80s revival 20 years ago. Only time will tell. Perhaps it will be the age of the tuner car, with retro-styled electric vehicles paying homage to the Mitsubishi Eclipse and the Nissan Skyline. This endless cycle of looking backward to move forward reveals something profound about us as a species. We are not purely rational beings, driven solely by utility. We are storytellers, and we are emotional creatures. We use design not just to move physically forward, but to carry our cherished memories, our collective stories, and our personal identities with us. The retro car is more than a product. It's a dialogue between what was and what could be, a tangible link in the chain of our own personal history. It's proof that while technology hurtles forward, our hearts often travel in circles. If this journey through the twists and turns of automotive history has sparked your curiosity and made you see the cars around you in a new light, please show us some love. That like button really helps the channel grow, and we'd love to hear from you in the comments. Tell us, which retro revival is your absolute favorite? Which piece of automotive history would you most like to see reborn? Thanks for thinking with us on Winds of Thought.